The soft drizzle of November rain turned the cemetery into a quiet song of sorrow. The sky was gray, and the earth was soaked, but it was the scene before her that made Ebel Daramola freeze mid-step. A woman in a soaked waitress uniform clutched a small boy against her chest, both of them crying at the base of a marble tombstone. The boy's tiny fists rubbed his eyes. The woman's shoulders shook with every breath. Ebel's breath caught. She gripped the bouquet of white caladiums tighter in her gloved hands. At 55, the matriarch of Daramola Global Holdings was used to silence, solitude, and power. But this was something else. The grave they knelt beside wasn't just any grave. It was his. Omari's, the only child she had. The man who had carried the family legacy with brilliance until a cruel car accident stole him away 3 years ago. Ebel's heels crunched the wet gravel as she stepped closer. Her voice sliced through the hush like thunder. "Excuse me," she said, cold and precise. "This is private ground. You have no business here." The woman looked up. Slowly, her eyes were swollen from crying, her face damp with tears and rain. But even through the pain, there was a quiet strength behind her trembling voice. I didn't know anyone would be here today," she said softly. Ebel's eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being ignored or questioned, especially not by strangers in rain-stained uniforms. "Who are you?" she asked, "and why are you mourning at my son's grave?" The child, maybe 4 years old, looked up. His eyes bright green, piercing, met Ebel's. Her breath caught in her throat. She had seen those eyes before, in the mirror, in baby pictures of Omari, in the man she had loved more than life. Those eyes were unmistakable. "I'm Ayana." "Nuuzu," the young woman said, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "And this is Kofi. I work down at Mama Zuri's kitchen on 5th. I come here every month." She hesitated, glancing down at the boy. "Because Omari meant something to us." Ebel's heart pounded. It wasn't possible. She had buried her son's secrets with him. She had hired investigators, combed through phone logs and journals. She would have known if there was a woman, or a child. Meant how? Her voice dropped, trembling more from rage than cold. "Explain." Ayana took a deep breath, rain sliding down her cheek like tears. Then she looked Ebel straight in the eyes and said, "Kofi is his son. And I promised Omari I would take care of him. No matter what." The bouquet slipped from Ebel's fingers. The petals scattered like memories across the wet stone. Her mind spun. 3 years. 3 years she had mourned her only son. 3 years thinking the Daramola name would end with her. Now she stood face to face with her grandson and his mother, whom she had never known. Her grandson, black, poor, raised in a life far from privilege. The thought sent fire through her chest, but not from shame, from confusion. And behind Ayana's eyes, something else flickered. Fear? Caution? Like this wasn't just a simple reunion, but the start of something bigger, darker. Ebel didn't know yet that this was just the first crack in a dam that held years of betrayal, secrets buried deeper than coffins, and that this young woman, drenched in rain and resolve, was about to unravel everything she had built. 2 weeks later, the lights burned bright in Ebel's private study, long after midnight. Her sleek mahogany table, imported from Ghana, was buried in folders, reports, surveillance, photos. Her empire had never been threatened like this. She flipped through a page and frowned. Single, no known family. Works 2 jobs. Lives in a rundown apartment behind the old railway line. Barely finished high school, she muttered. Malik. Okoro, her personal assistant, stood by silently. He had seen Ebel topple entire corporations without blinking. But now he saw something in her eyes he didn't recognize. Vulnerability. And the child's birth records? She asked, not. Looking up, Malik opened another folder, his voice measured. "That's where things get strange." No birth certificate. No hospital file. Nothing. It's like his biological mother never existed on paper. Ebel tapped her nails against the table. A sound her board feared more than thunder. 3 years ago, she had investigated Omari's final moments with surgical precision. She had found nothing, no lovers, no affairs, no child. Now this woman waltzed into her grief with a boy who had Omari's eyes. "Bring her in," she said coldly. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. In this office." The next day, Ayanna stood outside the glass tower of Daramola Global Holdings. Her only suit bought secondhand and ironed with care clung to her skin. She swallowed her nerves and stepped through the doors. The top-floor office stretched out like a throne room. Panoramic windows, polished stone floors. Ebel sat behind a massive ebony desk, a queen in her citadel. She motioned to the chair opposite her, deliberately sat lower. "Sit," she said. "I'll stand, thank you, as you wish." Ebel opened a folder. "I've had you investigated. 2 jobs, barely surviving, raising a child in poor conditions." Ayanna didn't flinch. "Kofi is loved, he's cared for. That's what matters." Ebel's smile was thin, sharp. "I'm sure you try. But a Daramola child deserves more than trying. He deserves the best." She slid a check across the table. 200,000 to start. "Kofi comes to live with me. Private school. Travel. Opportunity. You can visit on weekends." Ayanna stared at the check like it carried disease. "Are you offering to buy my son?" Ebel's tone turned icy. "He's not your son. He's my grandson. Blood of my blood. And frankly, someone like you can't offer what he needs." Ayanna laughed, dry and low. "Can I call you Ebel? You want to talk about family? I'm the one who holds him when he wakes up screaming. I'm the one who teaches him to tie his shoes. I'm the one who tucks him in at night. That's family." Ebel stood, towering. Sweet words. "But reality is different. You struggle to survive. He could have the world. And he deserves love," Ayanna shot back. "Not conditions, not deals, not bribes. Something your son didn't get, clearly." The silence that followed was so heavy it felt like thunder behind glass. Ebel Daramola stood frozen, as though Ayanna had slapped her with an open hand. "How dare you?" Ebel whispered. Ayanna didn't flinch. "Omari told me about you." Ebel blinked. "He told me about all the birthdays you skipped. The football games where he looked for you in the crowd and never found you. The holidays where your gifts came wrapped in designer bags but carried by assistants." Ayanna stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "You don't want Kofi because you love him. You want him because he's a way to fix something that can't be fixed. You want to wipe your guilt clean with a second chance." Ebel's fists clenched, knuckles pale under leather gloves. "You don't know anything about me." "No," Ayanna said, "but I knew your son. And I know exactly why he never told you about his child." She reached across the desk and picked up the check Ebel had offered, then without ceremony tore it in half. The pieces floated to the polished floor like torn feathers. "Kofi isn't for sale." A crack ran through Ebel's composure. Her voice dropped an octave, cold and deliberate. "Then we do this the hard way." She stepped around the desk, towering like the storm outside. "I have resources you couldn't begin to understand. Lawyers, investigators, people in government who owe me favors. I'll bury you in paperwork. A single mother with no degree, scraping rent in a broken apartment. I can prove you're unfit with my morning coffee." "In hand," Ayanna smiled. For the first time since entering the towering office, she smiled, and it wasn't fear that shone in her eyes. It was something far more dangerous, calm. "Ebel," she said gently, "you've made one big mistake." The billionaire flinched at the sound of her name on Ayanna's lips. "You've assumed I'm just some poor waitress who got lucky. That you could shake me with words and scare me with money. But there are things you don't know. About me, about Kofi, and especially about Omari. She walked to the door, heels clicking like a metronome of certainty, then paused and turned back, her gaze steady. "The next time we talk about Kofi," she said, "it'll be on my terms." The door clicked shut behind her. Ebel stood motionless, the torn check at her feet. In all her years, no one had ever walked out of a room with her feeling more powerful than when they walked in. But this girl, this woman had done just that. And the worst part? Ebel didn't know why. Something in Ayana's eyes made her feel exposed, observed, like someone was seeing through her carefully built walls and finding only dust on the other side. And for the first time in her empire-building life, Ebel felt watched. 3 days later, the storm Ayana had hinted at began to break. Ebel was reviewing quarterly earnings when the call came through. Her longtime attorney, Benjamin Adeyemi, wasn't his usual composed self. "Ebel," he said, voice tight. "We have a situation with the custody case." Ebel rolled her eyes. "She got a lawyer? What's next? Matching t-shirts?" "I thought the same thing," Benjamin admitted. "But you need to hear this. Ayana's not using a public defender." Ebel raised an eyebrow. "Then who?" There was a long pause. "Too long. It's Okanjo, Diarra, and Mensah." Ebel nearly dropped her espresso. "That's impossible. One of the most elite civil rights law firms in the country, known for gutting corrupt corporations and never backing down from a fight. They're taking her case pro bono," Benjamin added, "and they've already filed a preventive motion. If you try to remove the child without due process, they'll claim legal kidnapping based on class discrimination." Ebel slammed the phone down hard enough to crack the receiver. Ayana had played her first card, and it was bigger than Ebel ever imagined. That same night, in a modest second-floor apartment on the east side of town, another kind of meeting unfolded. The curtains were drawn tight, the room dimly lit, but the energy inside was electric. Ayana's living room was filled with people. No one in Ebel's world would ever expect to find in such a place. Dr. Tund Afolabi, a respected law professor from Eastbridge University, sat beside a stack of folders. Imani Diallo, a sharp-eyed journalist known for exposing corporate greed, clicked away on her laptop. And on the worn couch sat Auntie Halima, elegant in a cobalt scarf, her eyes glowing with pride. Ayana embraced her. "Thank you for coming all the way from Chicago." "When you called and said it was time," Halima replied, "I cleared my calendar. We've waited long enough." Kofi played on the carpet, his giggles a sweet contrast to the heavy conversation swirling above him. Dr. Tund opened one of the thick files. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Ayana? There's no going back once this begins. Ebel Daramola will use every weapon she has." Ayana met his gaze, calm and steady. "I've spent the last 3 years preparing for this. Every night course, every book I've read, every quiet favor I've called in. It's all led to this moment." Imani looked up from her screen. "The evidence you've gathered is strong. Corruption, intimidation, backdoor dealings. You've built a solid case against Daramola Global." She tapped a photo on her screen. "Illegal payments to zoning boards, safety violations in their factories overseas, threats to whistleblowers." Dr. Tund nodded. "She built her empire on silence. But we're about to make a lot of noise." Ayana looked down at Kofi, now asleep on a pillow. She knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "I'm not doing this to hurt her," she said softly. "But Omari didn't want his son raised in a cage of gold bars. And I will not let his memory be twisted into something convenient." She stood, her voice now iron under silk. "Ebel Daramola thinks she's the only one who knows how to fight. But she's not the only one with power. She's not the only one with people. And she's definitely not the only one who knows how to win." Auntie Halima walked over to the window, peering out at the cracked street below. A stray breeze rustled. the curtains as she crossed her arms, the lines on her face sharpening. Abel Daramola thinks her money makes her untouchable, she said. What she doesn't know is that my niece has been studying her like a textbook for the past 3 years. Every backdoor deal, every fake contract, every time she cheated the taxman. Dr. Tund nodded slowly, glancing at Ayanna with renewed respect. She taught business law at the University of Chicago for 3 decades, Ayanna said, motioning toward her aunt. She's the one who taught me the most important rule. Knowledge is the only weapon that can't be bought or stolen. Ayanna's phone began to buzz. She glanced at the screen, unsurprised. It's her, she answered and switched it to speaker. What game are you playing? Abel's voice screeched through the room. Okanjo, Diarra, and Mensa? How does a diner waitress hire the most feared law firm in the country? Ayanna stayed calm, her voice even. I warned you there were things about me you didn't know. I don't care what kind of tricks you're pulling, Abel spat. Kofi is my grandson, and I have resources you couldn't imagine in your wildest dreams. Ayanna smiled, her eyes dancing with quiet fire as she glanced at her allies. Abel, you still believe money is the only kind of power that matters. There was a pause. And what power could you possibly have? Abel barked. Ayanna leaned forward, voice steady. The truth. Laughter crackled through the speaker. Truth doesn't pay for top-tier attorneys. You're right, Ayanna said. But truth about your empire, truth about the fake. Shell companies, the kickbacks to zoning officials, the bribes that built Daramola Global, that truth is invaluable to people like Imani Diallo. Ayanna handed the phone to the journalist, who took it with practiced ease. Good afternoon, Ms. Daramola, Imani said. I'm preparing an expose on illegal corporate dealings. I'd like to offer you a chance to comment before publishing. The line went dead. Ayanna set the phone down. Auntie Halima chuckled. You've learned well, she said proudly. Never charge head-on when you can circle and strike from the shadows. Dr. Tund closed his briefcase with a click. The legal groundwork is solid. We have federal precedents on socioeconomic discrimination in custody cases. And I've got more than enough dirt to bury her brand, Imani added. Fake LLCs, money wired offshore, environmental violations in 3 states. Ayanna scooped Kofi into her arms. The child giggled, unaware that his future was being fiercely protected. She doesn't understand, Ayanna said. This isn't just about Kofi. It's about breaking the idea that wealth gives you the right to take anything, even someone's child. Auntie Halima stepped forward and placed a firm hand on her niece's shoulder. Your mother would have been proud. She always believed education was the one inheritance no one could take from you. Auntie Halima raised me, Ayanna explained. To the others, after my parents passed. She taught me it doesn't matter where you begin, only where you choose to go. And that sometimes you fight with words, not fists. The phone rang again. Dr. Tund answered. Ms. Nwosu, this is Benjamin Adiemi, counsel for Mrs. Daramola. She's prepared to offer a new proposal. $500,000 and supervised. Visitation. Ayanna looked around the room. Everyone shook their heads. She took the phone. Mr. Adeyemi, please tell your client that Kofi is not a transaction. Tell her she has 48 hours to withdraw all legal threats. Or come Monday, the Metropolitan Journal will publish every page we've gathered on Daramola Global. And I'm sure the IRS will find some of it quite enlightening. When the call ended, Imani raised an eyebrow. You sure you're ready for this? Once we publish, she unleash everything. Ayanna looked down at Kofi, now resting peacefully in her arms. I've been ready for 3 years, she said. Abel Daramola built a castle on secrets. But she's never fought anyone who came prepared. Dr. Tund stood, gathering files. Then we file first thing in the morning. And may the truth speak loudest. Auntie Halima kissed Ayanna's forehead. They've got money, she whispered. But we've got the truth, And that's the one thing even power can't silence. That night, as the world outside slept, Ayanna opened an old wooden trunk at the foot of her bed. Inside were years of quiet work diplomas from night law school, business certificates, glowing letters from respected professors. Buried at the bottom was a photograph. Omari stood smiling in the middle, Ayanna on one side. On the other, a young woman with fair skin and striking eyes. A woman Ebel Daramola had never seen, the truth of Kofi's lineage. Ayanna held the photo close to her chest. The game Ebel thought she was playing was never the real game. And soon the entire world would know why. Monday morning. Ebel Daramola jolted awake to her phone vibrating nonstop. 37 missed calls blinked across the screen. Outside her bedroom door, Malika Koro stood pale, holding a tablet. "You need to see this," he said, his voice cracking. The front page of the Metropolitan Journal glowed on the screen. Empire built on LIES, Daramola Global exposed. Ebel's knees buckled. She scrolled in disbelief. Dozens of pages. Screenshots of illegal contracts. Scans of wire transfers. Photographs of meetings she'd held in so-called secured rooms. Even audio clips conversations she had never imagined were recorded. How did they get this?" she whispered. Her phone rang again. It was Benjamin. "Ebel, it's a complete disaster. The IRS has issued warrants. The FBI's en route. The SEC just froze trading on Daramola Global." Ebel didn't answer. She hung up and called Ayanna directly. When Ayanna answered, her voice was steady as ever. "Good morning, Ebel. You did this." Ebel screamed. "You ruined everything." Ayanna didn't flinch. "I imagine you've read the news." "I'll bury you, I swear it. With what resources?" Ayanna asked gently. Silence. "I believe your bank accounts were frozen 15 minutes ago," she added. Ebel rushed to her laptop, typing feverishly. "Access denied. Access denied. Access denied." Ayanna continued. "You see, Ebel, Amanda doesn't work alone. She has a forensic team experts in financial crime. Every false signature, every secret fund, every move you thought was invisible, it's all documented." The television blared in the background. Reporters swarmed the Daramola building. Employees exited with cardboard boxes. Her legacy collapsing live on national television. "Why?" Ebel whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Ayanna's voice softened. "Because you never once asked who Kofi's mother was." A pause. "If you had, you would have learned her name was Jelani Daramola, the daughter of Remy Daramola, your cousin. The one you betrayed in 1995 to steal your stake in the company." The blood drained from Ebel's face. "No, she grew up in poverty because of you," Ayanna said. "She met Omari in college. They fell in love. But she never told him her last name. She knew what you were capable of. And after she died, I promised her I'd protect her son." Ayanna hung up. Ebel stood in her bedroom, the walls spinning. The woman she'd underestimated wasn't just some waitress. She was family. And she had come prepared. Ebel Daramola's hands trembled as the weight of truth sank into her chest. She vaguely remembered Remy, her cousin, once mentioning a daughter, Jelani, before disappearing from the family forever. But she had dismissed it, like everything. That didn't serve her ambitions. Ayanna's voice pierced the silence like a blade. "When Jelani died during childbirth, Omari came to me," she said, her tone even. "I was her best friend, and Omari knew Jelani wanted me to raise Kofi. But that wasn't all. Omari had found out what you did to Jelani's family." Ebel's face paled. "He knew," she whispered. "Yes, he spent the last months of his life investigating you. He gathered evidence, contracts, recordings, testimonies. When he realized how deep the corruption ran, he left everything with me. He asked me to wait, to pick the right moment. Outside the window, Ebel heard the screech of tires. FBI vans were pulling into the driveway, blue windbreakers spilling onto the property. The accident, she started, her voice cracking. Ayanna looked her dead in the eye. It wasn't an accident, she said quietly. Omari uncovered a laundering operation, dangerous people. People you brought into his life to solve your problems. They silenced him. Ebel staggered back a step. Her knees buckled. She had killed her own son through her greed. Kofi is the last rightful heir to the Daramola name, Ayanna continued. Jelani was legally entitled to the fortune you stole. And now, with your accounts frozen and your empire collapsing, that legacy has been returned. Heavy boots thudded. Up the stairs. Voices rang out firm, official. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Open up. Ebel's breath hitched. You've been planning this. For 3 years, she whispered. Ayanna nodded. Omari taught me that patience is the key to justice. Every class I took. Every document I filed. Every ally I built, it was all for this. The door burst open. Agents filled the room. One stepped forward, holding out a warrant. Ebel Daramola, you are under arrest for tax fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. Cold metal tightened around her wrists. As they let her out, Ayanna said one final thing. Kofi will grow up knowing the truth about his family. That justice, even when it's slow, always arrives. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. The woman who once ruled boardrooms was led down the steps in handcuffs, her fall broadcast live to millions. By nightfall, the Daramola name was synonymous with scandal. That afternoon, Ayanna sat on a park bench while Kofi played nearby, his laughter floating through the breeze. Her phone rang. It was Auntie Halima. I saw the news, daughter. How do you feel? Ayanna watched Kofi glide down the slide. Her heart swelled with both sorrow and peace. Like Omari can finally rest, she said softly. And Kofi will. Grow up knowing his family fought for justice, not revenge. The world now knew the truth. Ayanna wasn't just a brave waitress. She was a guardian of a stolen legacy, a woman who had turned grief into the most elegant form of justice the courts had ever seen. 2 years later, the walls of Millbrook Women's State Prison were gray and silent. Ebel Daramola, once feared and respected, now folded laundry for $2.50 an hour. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Daramola, you've got a visitor. Ebel assumed it would be her exhausted lawyer or a curious reporter. Instead, Ayanna walked in, radiant in a navy blue suit, calm and composed. Her confidence had only grown. I came with news, she said, sitting across from Ebel, who now looked older, smaller. Kofi was just accepted to Phillips Academy. Full scholarship, same school Omari attended. A strange flicker crossed Ebel's eyes. Was it pride? Regret? Why tell me this? She asked. Because you're still his grandmother. And because last week, Kofi asked me something. Ayanna replied. He asked if bad people can ever become good. Ebel looked down, shame thick in the air. I told him it depends, Ayanna continued, on whether the person truly wants to change. She opened a folder and slid across. Several photographs, Kofi smiling in his school uniform, playing violin, laughing with friends. He's learning violin just like his father. His music teacher says he's gifted. Ebel's voice was barely a whisper. How are you affording all this? Ayanna smiled, calm and steady. The courts restored what was taken from Jelani's family. The fortune you stole is now legally Kofi's. He's the rightful heir to the Daramola estate. Ebel closed her eyes. And you? She asked. What did you get out of this? Ayanna stood. Her voice was kind, but unshakable. I got to give Kofi what Omari never had, a family built on love, not power. She walked toward the door, then turned. And the peace of knowing Jelani and Omari can finally rest, Ebel didn't answer. That evening, in their new Lakeside, Connecticut home, Kofi ran through the garden, violin case in hand. From the porch, Ayana watched him, the breeze lifting her braids. Behind her, a framed MBA degree hung beside photos of her, Omari, and Jelani. "Mom, can I play for you?" Ayana beamed. "Of course, my love. Let me hear your magic." Inside, Auntie Halima stirred tea on the stove, smiling as the soft notes of Kofi's violin floated through the air. "He's just like his father," she whispered. Ayana nodded. She had told Kofi the truth. "That revenge isn't always loud or violent," she had said. "Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so beautiful that those who tried to break you regret not being part of it." Kofi would grow up knowing the battles his family had fought, but he would also grow up free from the weight of bitterness, free to choose dignity, justice, and purpose. Ebel Daramola had tried to buy a grandson, but family couldn't be bought. It had to be earned through love, presence, and sacrifice. Ayana had proven something more powerful than wealth, that quiet preparation, deep intelligence, and unwavering heart can outlast even the most brutal forms of arrogance. And in the end, she didn't just win custody. She rewrote the legacy. Have you ever had someone try to silence your dreams because of where you came from? Leave a comment below and share your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales that prove true family is built with love, not money, and justice always finds its way home.